Have you ever wondered why the Old Testament includes instructions about ritual washings? I mean, some of the rules might make a little sense to us, like when people are told to wash themselves after touching a dead person or having a discharge of some sort. But these purity regulations still seem really weird. I mean, people didn't even understand how germs worked back then. And in some cases, people were told to wash themselves when they were not even physically dirty. Moses washed Aaron and the rest of the priests when they were consecrated, and the whole nation of Israel was told to wash themselves when they were at Mount Sinai. Many people now believe that these purification rituals were just superstitious habits of ignorant people from a bygone era. We, on the other hand, know how science works and don't need to worry about ritual purification. Well, it's easy for us to assume that people of the past just didn't understand things that we understand today. C.S. Lewis calls this chronological snobbery. But are these Old Testament practices just really ancient, irrational beliefs? Or are we missing something important here? Well, in this video, I want to argue that these ritual washings played an important role in morally shaping God's people. This thought occurred to me recently when I was reading Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind. Now, Haidt doesn't share my Christian faith, but he's quite insightful about human nature. And in his book, Haidt explores our moral intuitions, and he cites some absolutely fascinating studies. In one study, subjects who were asked to wash their hands before filling out questionnaires became more concerned with issues related to moral purity like pornography and drug use. In another study, it was actually found that people who simply stood next to a hand sanitizer dispenser became temporarily more politically conservative. The basic point that Haidt makes here is that there's a two-way street between our bodies and our righteous minds. Immorality makes us feel physically dirty, and cleansing ourselves can sometimes make us more concerned about guarding our moral purity. Do you see how this might help us understand the Old Testament practices of ritual washing? You see, as the creator of our human bodies, God knows exactly how people are morally formed. And in the law, He put practices that helped shape His people. He gave them physical habits to mold their moral awareness. Scripture tells us that God didn't want His Old Testament people to live like the nations around them. He wanted them to be separate. He wanted them to be holy. He wanted them to honor each other instead of living selfishly. He wanted them to reject evil in their own camp and extend godly kindness to their neighbors. He wanted their character to be like His character. You know, we sometimes like to think of ourselves as minds that happen to live in bodies, but that just isn't true. We are whole, integrated people, and what we do with our bodies shapes our desires, our minds, and our emotions. As Haidt says, it's a two-way street between our bodies and our minds. Now, the New Testament makes it clear that the ritual elements of the Old Testament law, such as washings and dietary practices, are not binding on followers of Jesus today. But in the Gospels, Jesus did give Christians physical practices like baptism and communion to shape their moral intuitions. We are immersed in the waters of baptism and we taste the bread and the wine. As people, we need bodily experiences to remind us of spiritual realities. Well, I hope this video challenges you in a couple of ways. First, I hope it makes you curious about passages of the Bible that you might previously have dismissed as irrelevant. And secondly, I hope that this video helps you consider how the things that you choose to do with your body might be shaping your heart. Well, I'm Enoch, and there are some things for you to think about.